While everyone is talking about racism, let me say this on the topic of slavery: blacks didn't benefit.
Born in 1879, Sanger came of age during the heyday of the Comstock Act, a federal statute that criminalized contraceptives. Margaret Sanger believed that the only way to change the law was to break it. Starting in the 1910s, Sanger actively challenged federal and state Comstock laws to bring birth control information and contraceptive devices to women. Her fervent ambition was to find the perfect contraceptive to relieve women from the horrible strain of repeated, unwanted pregnancies. Tragedy leads to commitment. Sanger's commitment to birth control sprung from personal tragedy. One of 11 children born to a working-class Irish Catholic family in Corning, New York, at age 19, Margaret watched her mother die of tuberculosis. Just 50 years old, her mother had wasted away from the strain of 11 childbirths and 7 miscarriages. Facing her father over her mother's coffin, Margaret lashed out, "You caused this. Mother is dead from having too many children." Nurses botched abortions. Determined to escape her mother's fate, Sanger fled Corning to attend nursing school in the Catskills. Eventually, she found work in New York City as a visiting nurse on the Lower East Side. It was there that Sanger saw her personal tragedy writ large in the lives of poor, immigrant women. Lacking effective contraceptives, many women, when faced with another unwanted pregnancy, resorted to $5 back-alley abortions. It was after these botched abortions that Sanger was usually called in to care for the women. After experiencing many women's trauma and suffering, Sanger began to shift her attention from nursing to the need for better contraceptives. Anger turns to action. Sanger began to devote more and more of her time to her mission. In 1914, she coined the term birth control and soon began to provide women with information and contraceptives. Indicted in 1915 for sending diaphragms through the mail and arrested in 1916 for opening the first birth control clinic in the country, Sanger would not be deterred. In 1921, she founded the American Birth Control League, the precursor to the Planned Parenthood Federation, and spent her next 3 decades campaigning to bring safe and effective birth control into the American mainstream. Still more to do. But by the 1950s, although she had won many legal victories, Sanger was far from content. After 40 years of fighting to help women control their fertility, Sanger was extremely frustrated with the limited birth control options available to women. Since the 1842 invention of the diaphragm in Europe and the introduction of the first full-length rubber condom in the U.S. in 1869, there had been no new advances in contraceptive methods. Sanger had championed the diaphragm, but after promoting it for decades, she knew it was still the least popular birth control method in America. The diaphragm was highly effective, but it was expensive, awkward, and most women were too embarrassed to use it. Worried about population growth. But Sanger, now in her 70s and in poor health, was not ready to give up. She had been dreaming of a magic pill for contraception since 1912. She was no longer just concerned about women suffering from unwanted pregnancies. Now a firm believer in the theory of population control, she was also worried about the potential toll of unchecked population growth on the world's limited natural resources. A magic pill. Tired of waiting for science or industry to turn its attention to the problem, Margaret Sanger set out on a mission. She sought someone to realize her vision of a contraceptive pill as easy to take as an aspirin. She wanted a pill that could provide women with cheap, safe, effective, and female-controlled contraception. Her search ended in 1951 when she met Gregory Pincus, a medical expert in human reproduction who was willing to take on the project. Soon after, she found a sponsor for the research, international harvester heiress Catherine McCormick. Their collaboration would lead to the FDA approval of Inovide, the first oral contraceptive, in 1960. With the advent of the pill, Sanger accomplished her life-long goal of bringing safe and effective contraception to the masses. A dream achieved. Not only did Sanger live to see the realization of her magic pill, but 4 years later, at the age of 81, Sanger witnessed the undoing of the Comstock laws. In the 1965 Supreme Court case Griswold v. Connecticut, the court ruled that the private use of contraceptives was a constitutional right. When Sanger passed away a year later, after more than half a century of fighting for the right of women to control their own fertility, she died knowing she had won the battle.
From slavery, just like we don't benefit from abortion. Planned Parenthood kills more black lives in 2 weeks than the KKK lynched in a century. Margaret Sanger said that she did not want the word to get out that she wanted to exterminate the Negro population.
All right, welcome back now to our series, Kids at Risk. When the Supreme Court made its ruling on Roe versus Wade, of course, the left meltdown went nuclear. Many blue states rushed to enact laws to counteract it, even though they really didn't have to. Every year, around 50,000 teens across this country abort potential children. Teens under the age of 20 make up 12% of abortions nationwide. Did you know that? Minors ages 17 and younger, about 4% of those abortions. 36 states require some sort of parental notification and or consent in this country. A lot of the states you'd expect to see on that map. Democrats, of course, trying to change that. Groups like the ACLU are advocating for unfettered access to abortion at any age. On its website, the ACLU says most teens don't involve a parent for very good reasons, claiming family involvement would only exacerbate an already volatile situation. John Amanchukwu is a pastor and author of the book Erased, Uncovering the Lies of Critical Race Theory and Abortion, and he joins us now. And sir, it's good to have you on. It's interesting to find, that this political, the people with this ideology on the left are trying to end parental involvement in so many different things at the same time. Abortion, when a kid gets pregnant, a teenager gets pregnant, education, they don't want parental involvement in that, and even decisions to mutilate a body, to change a gender at the age of 10 or 12 or 15 years old. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Alice Bailey, who is known as the prophetess of the New Age movement, put together a 10-point plan. And the second thing that she wanted to do was to destroy parental involvement and break the communication between parents and children and make it where children have excessive rights to the point that they can do what they want to do. And in this country, it has worked. I believe that America is spiraling downward, and it's time for us to storm the cockpit. It's
obviously that the culture of this country is being eviscerated by whatever you want to call this ideology that has just taken over such a wide swath of the opposing political party. After Texas enacted a law prohibiting abortions after 6 weeks in September of 2021, the number of abortions statewide from September to December dropped by 46% compared with the same period in 2020. That according to data from Texas's Health and Human Services Commission. I think that a liberal would see a number like that and say that is terrifying, that there were less abortions. And I just wonder, how do you make amends with that? I mean, some people would say that is an atrocity. Others would say that that's a wonderful statistic.
There is something sinister and evil about the Democratic Party. They have pushed a culture of death in this nation. We just witnessed the midterm elections where they campaigned and used billions of dollars to convince the American populace that we should kill the most innocent amongst us, children. And now they're not happy with the parental rights that parents have over their children, and they still want to push abortion on demand. What is it with the left that causes them to hate children? If they can't chemically castrate a child, they will seek to kill the child in the womb. Today we have babies killing babies, and the left isn't satisfied with that. They want more and more abortions.
When you take it as a whole and you see the entire agenda at work, how do you explain it to people when they ask you what is happening in this country? As a pastor, somebody that people go to you and they want to understand what's happening to the country that they thought that they knew.
Well, the Bible says it this way, that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach against any people. We cannot have the favor of God or the blessings of God without righteousness. And so today, Satan, the enemy, has infiltrated our culture, and he will use whatever political party that he desires to push his agendas. And I say to pastors, I say to leaders, I say to fathers out there, it's time for us to stand up and get on the front lines and speak up for children and women in our culture. There is no slavery like lynching a baby in the womb. The same people who talk about the racist education standards, they turn a blind and deaf ear to the fact that blacks are being slaughtered in this country, by and large, by the Democrat Party and white liberals who seek to further the plan of Margaret Sanger.
Well said. Pastor John Amanchukwu, thank you so much for taking the time.